In some towns, the streets hold secrets that never reach the news. Entire communities know what happened, but silence, fear, or loyalty keeps the truth buried. Neighbors whisper, doors are locked tighter, and strangers are met with wary eyes. What happened in these towns isn't just history. It's a story people refuse to tell. Shadows linger in homes, along forgotten trails, and behind closed doors. And when you dig too deep, you realize some mysteries are meant to stay hidden. Skidmore, Missouri, 1981. A small town rattled by crime and fear. On September 3rd, Ken McElroy, a man notorious for harassment, assault, and intimidation, sat in his pickup truck in front of a general store. Locals had suffered at his hands for years. But that day, the town decided enough was enough. Witnesses later reported seeing a group of townspeople confront him openly. Shots rang out in broad daylight. Ken McElroy was killed instantly, his truck sliding into the dirt street. Yet despite dozens of witnesses, no one identified the shooters. Law enforcement was left with a perplexing case. Over 45 people had seen the killing, but silence fell over the town like a shroud. The silence wasn't just fear, it was community enforcement. Locals had endured years of threats, harassment, and intimidation. Skidmore's residents knew the truth, but loyalty to each other, and perhaps a sense of justice, kept the identities hidden. Even decades later, the murder remains officially unsolved, a chilling reminder that in some small towns, justice takes forms the law cannot touch. The aftermath of McElroy's killing only deepened the mystery. Investigators arrived quickly, but witnesses were tight-lipped. Not a single person would name the shooters. Newspapers called it a town execution, but the law could not act. Everyone claimed ignorance. Some residents admitted later that they had been too terrified of McElroy to speak up while he lived. Yet once he was gone, the fear shifted into protective silence. Locals described an eerie sense of relief mingled with dread. The streets were quieter, yet the memory of the shooting lingered like a shadow. Children whispered about the day Ken McElroy died, and adults avoided mentioning his name altogether. The town collectively decided that the details were theirs alone, a secret bound by fear, loyalty, and a strange sense of justice. Law enforcement was baffled. Despite dozens of eyewitnesses, forensic evidence, and immediate investigation, no one could officially solve the case. The community's code of silence was absolute. Even in interviews decades later, Skidmore residents skirt around specifics, unwilling to betray the unspoken rules that governed that day. The killing of Ken McElroy is more than a crime story. It's a study in collective memory, morality, and silence. The truth exists, but it is buried under decades of fear and loyalty. Small towns like Skidmore remind us that sometimes the most shocking mysteries are not hidden by darkness, but by the people themselves. From the secretive streets of Skidmore, Missouri, we move to the hills of West Virginia, 1945. Another small town, another mystery that refuses to die. Here, silence and uncertainty linger not from fear of a man, but from a tragedy so confounding that even decades later, families and locals still guard the truth, or what little of it they can grasp. On Christmas Eve, 1945, in Fayetteville, West Virginia, a fire consumed the Sodder family home. The fire destroyed much of the house, but the most haunting part was what emerged afterward. 5 of the 10 Sodder children were never found. George and Jenny Sodder awoke to flames, desperately trying to save their children. Yet no remains of the missing children were ever discovered. No bones, no ashes, nothing. Witnesses reported strange occurrences in the days leading up to the fire. Family members noticed unusual phone calls, odd sightings of strangers in the neighborhood, and a sense that something was stalking the family. On the night of the fire, some neighbors claimed they saw mysterious figures near the home, their faces obscured by darkness. George Sodder spent years investigating, following leads from across the country, even printing missing children posters for decades. He suspected foul play, an abduction orchestrated to cover up a grudge, but the truth was elusive. Law enforcement found no concrete evidence of arson or abduction. The fire itself was mysterious. No accelerants were detected, yet the blaze consumed the house in a way that seemed almost calculated. To this day, the fate of Maurice, Martha, Marion, Angela, and Betty Sodder remains unknown. The story lingers in Fayetteville, whispered among locals, a tragedy that refuses closure, where the town itself holds secrets the outside world cannot unravel. As the years passed, the mystery of the Sodder children only deepened. George Sodder received letters and phone calls from unknown sources claiming knowledge of his children's whereabouts, but none led to answers. One notable report came in 1968. A man saw a girl in a boarding school in Illinois who matched Angela Sodder, but by the time investigators checked, she had vanished. Strangers were reportedly seen around the Sodder home in the weeks before the fire. Some neighbors remembered a suspicious truck parked nearby, its occupants acting strangely. George and Ginny insisted someone had a motive, perhaps revenge or a personal vendetta, but the trail went cold. Authorities could not confirm arson, yet the fire's pattern and the total absence of remains suggested foul play. Despite media attention and decades of searches, the missing children were never recovered. The home was rebuilt, but the house that rose from the ashes held no comfort, only questions. Families in Fayetteville still whisper about the case, with some suggesting that the town itself knows more than it reveals. There is a haunting sense of collective silence, a truth buried alongside unanswered questions. The Sodder case is not just about missing children. It's about a town, a family, and a puzzle that refuses closure. It is a reminder that small-town mysteries often carry weight far beyond their size, where fear, secrecy, and loyalty intertwine to protect truths the outside world can only speculate about. From the hills of West Virginia to the quiet streets of Villisca, Iowa, the pattern of small-town horror continues. Here, fear and secrecy lingered long before the Sodder tragedy, in a case that shocked an entire community and remains one of the most infamous unsolved murders in American history. Locals still hesitate to speak of it, and outsiders are met with wary silence. In the early morning hours of June 10, 1912, in Villisca, Iowa, the Moore family was brutally murdered. 6 members of the family, including Josiah Moore, his wife Sarah, and 4 children, were found bludgeoned to death in their home. The killer also murdered 2 visiting children, making the total victims 8. The murders shocked the town, and the scene was horrifying. Bodies lay where they fell, and the room was eerily silent except for the signs of struggle. Investigators arrived quickly, documenting the scene in meticulous detail. Windows were locked, doors bolted, and yet there was no sign of forced entry. An axe, believed to be the murder weapon, lay near the bodies, but no fingerprints or conclusive evidence could identify the killer. Over the years, numerous suspects were investigated, including traveling preachers, drifters, and locals, but none were ever convicted. Locals spoke of strange occurrences before and after the murders, shadowy figures near the house, unexplained noises in the dead of night, and a pervasive sense of dread in the town. Tourists and investigators who later visited the house, preserved as a historic site, report sudden cold spots, disembodied whispers, and fleeting shadows, echoes of the horror that once unfolded. The Villisca Axe murders remain an enduring enigma, a violent act in a quiet town, witnessed by no one, yet remembered by generations. Some say the town itself guards the secret, unwilling or unable to reveal what it truly knows. Even more unsettling are the reports from the house itself. Visitors to the Villisca Axe murder house, now preserved as a historic site, describe footsteps echoing across empty rooms, doors opening and closing on their own, and fleeting shadows glimpsed from the corners of their eyes. Some claim to feel an oppressive presence, a heaviness that presses on the chest, as if the horrors of that night still linger in the air. The town of Villisca carries the memory like a wound. Locals rarely speak openly, and outsiders are often met with cautious silence. Over a century later, the identities of the killer, or killers, remain unknown, leaving historians, investigators, and thrill-seekers to speculate endlessly. Interviews with residents hint at grudges, family feuds, and unexplained motives, but nothing concrete ever surfaces. Across Skidmore, Fayetteville, and Villisca, a pattern emerges, small towns hiding secrets, where fear, loyalty, and unspoken rules suppress the truth. From vigilante justice to mysterious disappearances to brutal killings, these communities harbor events that outsiders can only imagine. What connects them is more than tragedy. It's the weight of silence, the unseen threads of fear, and the questions left unanswered. These mysteries are not just stories. They are living histories, remembered quietly, whispered carefully, and sometimes never spoken at all. Drop your theory in the comments. Which of these small-town secrets chills you the most? And remember, some truths are buried not in the ground, but in the hearts of the people who live them.